autumn chill bit through my valet uniform as I parked another Mercedes at the Bellevue Country Club. Mother's 55th birthday celebration was in full swing inside, and thanks to my brother Michael's brilliant suggestion, I was spending it directing traffic in the parking lot. "Hey sis, that Bentley needs moving," Michael called out from the entrance, champagne glass in hand. His Armani suit probably cost more than what he thought I made in a year. "The valet suits you, Julia. Finally found your calling." If he only knew that I'd turned down buying Bentley's parent company last month because I found their innovation timeline too slow. But here I was, playing my part, watching my family celebrate while thinking I was barely making ends meet. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, my COO. "Emergency board meeting needed. Singapore acquisition hit a snag. $4.2 billion deal at stake. Private jet standing by." I glanced at my watch, an understated Patek Philippe that cost more than Michael's house, and typed back, "How long can we delay? Critical decision needed within 2 hours. Asian markets opening soon." Perfect timing. I'd been wondering how to make my exit from this charade, and now the universe had handed me the perfect opportunity. Through the country club's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see my family holding court, celebrating their perceived success while relegating me to the parking lot. "Julia." My mother's voice carried across the driveway. "There's a Ferrari coming. Try not to scratch it. We can't afford your mistakes tonight." I suppressed a smile, remembering the fleet of Ferraris sitting in my private garage. The one I'd designed myself was still in development at Maranello, with specifications that would make this one look like a family sedan. Inside, during my brief breaks to warm up, I caught snippets of conversation about me. My father, Charles Harrison, proudly introducing Michael as his successful child, the investment banker who'd recently made vice president at Morgan Stanley. Then, with a dismissive wave toward the parking lot, "Julia's still finding herself. Finding myself. Right. Like founding Harrison Global Technologies at 23, building it into a $50 billion company by 30, and keeping my identity secret from everyone, including my family who thought I was struggling with a small tech support job. Still driving other people's cars?" Michael's wife Amanda smirked as she handed me her keys. "Though I suppose it's better than taking the bus like you usually do." If she only knew I took the bus because I was testing my company's new autonomous public transportation system. The same system her precious Morgan Stanley had tried to invest in last month, only to be rejected without even getting a meeting. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah, my executive assistant. Jet-fueled and ready at private airstrip. Board members assembled in Singapore. Also, Morgan Stanley called again about investment opportunity. Should I send the usual rejection? I watched Michael bragging to his banking friends about his recent $1 million bonus. The same amount I spent on lunch meetings last week. "Julia." My father's stern voice cut through my thoughts. "Stop dawdling with that phone and park these cars. Unless you'd rather be unemployed." Unemployed. The irony was delicious. My company had just been valued at $52 billion, and I employed more people than every guest at this party combined. Then I heard it, the distinctive sound of jet engines approaching. I'd specifically instructed my pilot about the flight path, making sure it would be visible from the country club's windows. "My word," I heard someone say inside. "That's the Harrison Global Technologies private jet. I'd know that livery anywhere." Michael rushed to the window. "Harrison Global? They're impossible to get a meeting with. Even Morgan Stanley can't get past their gatekeepers." I checked my watch again. Time for the show to begin. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, removing my valet uniform to reveal a perfectly tailored Chanel suit underneath. "I'm afraid I have an emergency board meeting to attend." The sound of the jet grew louder as I shed the valet jacket, revealing not just the Chanel suit, but also the custom-designed Harrison Global Technologies CO pin that had sparked bidding wars among collectors. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor in perfect synchronization with the realization dawning on their faces. That's impossible," Michael stammered, his Morgan Stanley VP badge suddenly looking remarkably cheap. "You're a valet. You work in tech support." "Correction," I smiled, sliding my hand through my hair and removing the purposefully messy ponytail. "I own a tech support company. Along with Harrison Global Technologies, Harrison Aerospace, and about 50 other corporations you've probably begged for meetings with." The jet made another pass, closer this time, its distinctive black and gold livery clearly visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The same colors that adorned my CEO pin, which Michael was now staring at with growing horror. "Ms. Harrison," Sarah's voice came through my earpiece. "The board is assembled in Singapore. Mr. Lee from the Singapore Investment Authority is particularly anxious about the $4.2 billion deal. Tell them I'll be there in 90 minutes, I replied loud enough for everyone to hear. The room had gone deathly quiet, every guest frozen in place as they processed what was happening. "Julia," my father stepped forward, his banking instincts kicking in. "What game are you playing?" I pulled out my phone, the real one, not the decoy I'd been using, and projected the Harrison Global Technologies portfolio onto the club's display screens. "No games, father. Just business. Your kind of business, remember? The kind you said I'd never understand." The screens filled with data. Market cap $52 billion. Annual revenue $18 billion. Personal net worth $15.4 billion. Michael's recent $1 million bonus suddenly looked like pocket change. But you take the bus." Amanda blurted out, her designer dress suddenly seeming tacky against my understated elegance. "Yes, I do." I smiled. "The same autonomous buses my company is developing. The project Morgan Stanley has been desperately trying to invest in." I turned to Michael. "How many times have you pitched that deal to my board, brother?" 15. 20. Michael's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. "Those meetings, the rejections, came directly from me." I checked my watch again. "Though I particularly enjoyed the last one where you told my board that your failure, sister, was proof that tech investments were unreliable." My mother had found her voice, though it trembled slightly. "Darling, why didn't you tell us? We're family." "Family?" I raised an eyebrow. "Like when you made me park cars at your birthday party? Or when you told the country club board that I couldn't afford membership? By the way," I gestured around the room, "I bought the club last week. Amazing what money can do." The jet made one final pass, close enough now that the registration number was visible. Michael, ever the banker, recognized it instantly. "HE001, he whispered. That's the CEO's personal aircraft." "Very good, Michael." I smoothed my suit. "Though I prefer HGD002 for shorter flights. This one's just for show tonight." Sarah's voice came through again. "Car is in position, Ms. Harrison." Singapore board growing restless. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to the stunned room, "I'm afraid I have a $4.2 billion acquisition to oversee. Mother, happy birthday. I'd stay for cake, but..." I gestured to the screens showing my company's stock price. "Markets wait for no one. Julia, wait." My father called out. "We should talk about this. As a family. There are opportunities." "Opportunities?" I turned back, enjoying the desperation in his voice. "Like the family investment fund you excluded me from? The one that's now worth less than my daily coffee budget." The sound of helicopter blades cut through the night. My actual transportation to the airfield. Michael's banking friends were practically drooling, recognizing the distinctive sound of the ultra-rare Airbus corporate helicopter. "By the way, Michael," I added as I walked toward the door, "Morgan Stanley's pitch? Rejected again. Though this time it's personal." The helicopter's blades whirred above the country club as I stepped outside, leaving a room full of shattered illusions behind. But I wasn't done yet. This evening's revelation had been 8 years in the making, and I intended to savor every moment. "Julia." Michael's voice carried over the noise as he chased after me, his perfectly coiffed hair now disheveled. "Wait. We need to talk about this." I paused, turning to face my brother who had spent years making sure everyone knew I was the family failure. "Talk about what, Michael? Your rejected Morgan Stanley pitches? Or perhaps your recent attempt to convince the Harrison Global Board that my leadership was questionable at best?" His face paled. "You know about that?" "I know everything." I pulled out my tablet, displaying his confidential Morgan Stanley presentations, including your suggestion last month that Harrison Global would be better off under Morgan Stanley's experienced leadership. "Tell me, what experience were you referring to? Your 3 years as VP or Amanda's trust fund?" By now the entire party had spilled outside, their designer outfits ill-suited for the autumn chill. My mother clutched her pearls. The ones she'd told me were too expensive for my lifestyle when I'd admired them last Christmas. If she only knew about my private collection of rare gems that made her jewelry look like costume pieces. Ms. Harrison, Sarah's voice came through my earpiece again. Singapore update. Mr. Lee is offering an additional $800 million to close the deal tonight. Also, Morgan Stanley's CEO is trying to reach you personally. I smiled, watching Michael's face as he overheard the numbers being discussed. His entire career's worth of deals wouldn't add up to this single transaction. Tell Mr. Lee we'll discuss terms en route, I replied. And Morgan Stanley? Send them our standard rejection. Though add a note. Perhaps ask Michael Harrison about his sister's business acumen. Julia, sweetheart. My father stepped forward, adopting his negotiator's stance. Let's be reasonable. You've clearly done well for yourself. We should align our interests. The Harrison family name is now synonymous with technological innovation. I cut him off. No thanks to you. Remember what you said when I started the company? Tech is for people who can't handle real business. How's that assessment looking now, father? The helicopter touched down on the country club's pristine lawn. My helicopter on my lawn. The pilot had executed the landing perfectly, giving everyone a clear view of the Harrison Global Technologies logo and my personal insignia. Your net worth, Amanda blurted out, still staring at the financial data displayed on her phone. It's more than the combined value of everyone at this party. Everyone at this party, their extended families and their entire companies, I corrected her. Though that's last week's valuation. It's probably higher now. My mother stepped forward, tears threatening to ruin her perfect makeup. All this time, when we thought you were struggling, when we tried to help you find a real job. Real job? I laughed. Like last month, when you suggested I apply for an entry-level position at Michael's bank. The same bank that's been desperately trying to get a meeting with me for years. The night air was filled with the sound of notifications as more news broke about Harrison Global's latest acquisition. Michael's phone buzzed continuously, likely his superiors at Morgan Stanley realizing their star VP had been unknowingly sabotaging their chances with one of the world's most valuable companies. Sarah, I called out, show them the property portfolio. The country club's exterior screens lit up, displaying my real estate holdings, the entire block of Manhattan where Michael rented his luxury apartment, the building where my father's investment firm leased office space, the exclusive shopping complex where Amanda bragged about shopping. You own. Michael's voice cracked. You own everything. Not everything, I corrected him. Just the important things, like the mortgage company holding your house loan. Or the private equity firm that's about to decline your latest bonus request. Ms. Harrison, Sarah appeared beside me, tablet in hand. Singapore transfer confirmed. The additional funds have been wired. Also, your father's investment firm just lost their biggest client to us. I watched my father's face as he realized what that meant. His boutique investment firm had been hanging by a thread, kept afloat only by that one major client. A client that now preferred doing business with his failure daughter. The valet service was a nice touch, Michael, I said, walking toward the helicopter. Though next time, check who owns the cars you're having parked. Most of them belong to my subsidiaries. Julia, please, my mother made one last attempt. We're still family. We can work together, support each other. I paused at the helicopter's door. Support? Like when you banned me from family investments. Or when you told the country club board I couldn't afford membership. I smiled. By the way, the board meeting tomorrow is cancelled. Along with your memberships. You can't do this, Michael protested weakly. Actually, I can. And I am. I checked my watch. A gesture they'd seen me do countless times, never realizing it was controlling more than just time. At my signal, every screen in and around the country club lit up with the same message. Harrison Global Technologies announces $5 billion Singapore expansion. Enjoy the rest of the party, I said, stepping into the helicopter. Though you might want to check your accounts tomorrow. It seems Morgan Stanley is reviewing all VP positions, starting with those who failed to recognize significant investment opportunities. As the helicopter lifted off, I watched their figures grow smaller. My family, their friends, their entire world of artificial success diminishing beneath me. Through my earpiece I could hear the Singapore board members discussing the acquisition, billions of dollars hanging on my next decision. "Sarah," I called out over the noise of the rotors, "send them a gift." "The usual, Ms. Harrison?" "No." I smiled, thinking of all the times they'd mocked my little tech job. "Send them a bus pass. After all, they'll need to get used to public transportation." The helicopter banked toward my private airfield where HG001 waited. Below, the country club, my country club, continued to display the evidence of their daughter's success, while the family that had dismissed her for so long stood in the darkness, finally understanding what real business looked like. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success they never saw coming, delivered with a precision that makes every previous slight worth it. And as my jet lifted off for Singapore, I couldn't help but think that parking cars had been worth it, just to see their faces when they realized who really owned the lot. "Sarah," I said as we reached cruising altitude, "send the country club a bill for the helicopter landing. Address it to Michael Harrison, former VP of Morgan Stanley. After all, he'd insisted on managing tonight's event. It was only fair he should manage the expenses too." As we crossed the Pacific toward Singapore, Sarah handed me one final update. "Your brother's Morgan Stanley termination is confirmed, effective immediately." The board cited catastrophic failure to recognize key investment opportunities. Also, your parents' country club membership fees have been retroactively adjusted to the non-family rate. I leaned back in my jet's custom leather seat, opening my laptop to review the Singapore acquisition details. "And the bus passes?"
The elegant dining room of the Harrison family mansion felt suffocating as I sat across from my sister Emma, watching her perfectly manicured fingers trace the rim of her wine glass. Our monthly family dinners had become an exercise in endurance, each gathering a fresh opportunity for her to remind everyone of my apparent failure. "So Sarah," Emma's voice carried that familiar note of condescension, "still running that little vintage clothing shop downtown?" I took a slow sip of water, hiding my smile. If only she knew that little shop was just a hobby, a front for my real empire. Yes, Emma. Still there. My parents exchanged that look I'd grown accustomed to over the years, a mixture of disappointment and resignation. In their eyes, I was the daughter who had thrown away a promising future in finance to play shopkeeper. "You know," Emma continued, reaching for the crystal decanter, "my tech startup is really taking off. We're meeting with a major investor tomorrow. One of those mysterious Silicon Valley types who practically owns half the tech world." She paused for effect. "The kind of success you could have had if you'd stuck with your MBA instead of this." I thought about the stack of investment proposals sitting on my desk at Vertex Ventures, my private equity firm that managed over $12 billion in tech investments. Emma's startup was just one of hundreds seeking funding this quarter. She had no idea she'd be pitching to me tomorrow, or rather to Alexandra Stone, the reclusive founder of Vertex. Not everyone needs to run a tech company to be successful. "Emma," I replied mildly, passing the bread basket to our father. She laughed, that sharp, dismissive sound I'd heard so many times before. "Of course not. Some people are content with smaller dreams." Our mother jumped in, ever the peacekeeper. "Emma, dear, perhaps we could talk about something else. Sarah's shop is quaint, and she seems happy." Quaint. The word echoed in my mind as I thought about the meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Emma would walk into my sleek downtown office, expecting to meet the legendary Alexandra Stone, never suspecting that her failure of a sister was the billionaire investor she'd been desperate to impress. I hadn't planned it this way. 10 years ago, when I left my promising career in investment banking, my family thought I was having a breakdown. The truth was, I'd seen an opportunity they couldn't understand. While working at Goldman Sachs, I developed an algorithm that could predict market trends with unprecedented accuracy. Instead of sharing it with my employers, I quit, sold everything I owned, and started trading with my own money. The vintage clothing shop was perfect cover, a small business that nobody would look too closely at, while I built something bigger in the shadows. The first million came quickly, then 10 million. By the time I started Vertex Ventures, I had turned my initial investment into over $100 million. Now, 5 years later, I was one of the most influential tech investors in the country, not that anyone knew my real identity. Tell us more about your startup, Emma. Our father encouraged, beaming with pride. Sarah, you could learn something here. Emma straightened in her chair, practically glowing. Well, we developed a revolutionary AI platform for predictive analytics. Our preliminary numbers suggest we could corner the market within 2 years. We just need this investment to scale properly. I nodded, thinking about the flaws I'd already spotted in her business plan. Her company's algorithm was derivative, their market analysis superficial. Tomorrow's meeting would be interesting. The investor we're meeting, Emma continued, they say she's brilliant but absolutely ruthless. Alexandra Stone. Have you heard of her? I nearly choked on my water. Ruthless wasn't a word I used to describe myself. But the media loved painting that picture. The name sounds familiar, I managed. Of course it just sounds familiar to you. Emma rolled her eyes. You're too busy color-coding vintage dresses to keep up with the tech world. She's practically a legend. Nobody knows what she looks like. She's never appeared in public or had her photo taken. But she's got this incredible track record of picking winning startups. If only she knew that her mysterious investor spent her Sundays sorting through vintage Channel and Dior, finding homes for beautiful pieces of fashion history. Some people prefer to stay out of the spotlight, I offered. Please, Emma scoffed. When I'm running a billion-dollar company, everyone will know my name. I'm not going to hide behind some mystique like Stone does. Our mother touched Emma's arm proudly. You always did know how to command attention, dear. Unlike Sarah, she glanced at me apologetically. Well, some people are just more suited to smaller ventures. I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment alone. In my purse, my phone buzzed with a message from my assistant. Ms. Stone, final background checks on Harrison Tech completed. Several red flags in their financial projections. I typed back quickly, meeting still on for tomorrow. I want to hear their pitch. When I returned to the dining room, Emma was showing everyone her company's website on her tablet. See, we've already got interest from major players. Tomorrow's meeting is just a formality, really. I mean, who wouldn't want to invest in this? I thought about the 3 other AI companies in my portfolio that were light years ahead of Emma's technology. It looks interesting, I said diplomatically. Interesting? Emma's voice rose slightly. It's revolutionary, but I wouldn't expect you to understand. How's the vintage handbag business going? Actually, I smiled. I just acquired a rare 1956 Hermes Kelly bag. The previous owner was a tech executive who lost everything in bad investments. Interesting story, really. Emma missed the warning in my words, too caught up in her own narrative. Well, after tomorrow, I'll be able to buy all the designer bags I want. Not secondhand ones, of course. As dessert was served, I watched my sister hold court, detailing her plans for after she received her investment. A mansion in Pacific Heights, a private jet, a yacht, perhaps. Our parents hung on every word, occasionally glancing my way with pity. I thought about my penthouse overlooking the bay, the private island I bought last year, the fleet of cars I rarely used. None of them knew. None of them had ever bothered to look past the surface of my little shop to see what I was really building. I should head out, I said, standing up. Early day tomorrow. Got a shipment of vintage dresses coming in. Emma smirked. While you're sorting through old clothes, I'll be securing my future. Don't worry though, once I'm successful, maybe I'll let you handle my dry cleaning. I hugged our parents goodbye, enduring their well-meaning but condescending advice about it's never too late to go back to finance. As I walked to my car, a deliberately modest Audi rather than the Bentley parked in my garage at home, I couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow would certainly be interesting. What Emma didn't know was that I'd already thoroughly investigated her company. I'd seen the inflated projections, the technical shortcomings, the questionable market analysis. Tomorrow, she would walk into my office expecting to dazzle Alexandra Stone with her revolutionary vision. Instead, she would learn some hard truths about both her business and her assumptions about success. As I drove home to my penthouse, I thought about how appearances had always mattered so much to my family. Emma, with her designer clothes and loud ambitions, was their idea of success. Me? I was the disappointment who had settled for less, the cautionary tale they whispered about at family gatherings. But tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, Emma would learn that sometimes the biggest success stories are written by those who work quietly, away from the spotlight. Tomorrow, she would discover that her mysterious billionaire investor, the woman she'd been desperate to impress, was none other than her failure of a sister. I smiled as I pulled into my private garage, thinking about the look that would cross Emma's face when she realized the truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving others wrong, it's letting them prove themselves wrong while you build an empire in silence. The next morning, I arrived at Vertex Ventures headquarters 2 hours early. The entire floor-to-ceiling glass building belonged to my company, though officially it was owned by a web of holding companies that all led back to Alexandra Stone, my carefully crafted alter ego. My executive office occupied the entire top floor, with views of the San Francisco Bay that still took my breath away. I deliberately decorated it to project power while maintaining mystery, minimalist furniture, abstract art, and strategic lighting that would keep my face in partial shadow during meetings. Miss Stone, my assistant Michael appeared at the door. Harrison Tech's team has arrived. They're 30 minutes early. Of course they were. Emma always did like to appear eager. Let them wait in the conference room, I instructed, adjusting my outfit one last time. I'd chosen a Tom Ford pantsuit in charcoal gray, with subtle Bulgari jewelry, elegant but not flashy. My hair was swept up in a sophisticated chinen, and I wore glasses I didn't need, another layer of disguise. Also, I added, make sure the cameras are recording. I want to document this meeting. 20 minutes later, I watched through one-way glass as Emma paced the conference room, smoothing her designer dress repeatedly. She was accompanied by her technical co-founder, their CFO, and, to my surprise, our father. Daddy decided to come support his star daughter. I murmured to myself, checking my watch. Time to begin. I waited exactly 7 more minutes, long enough for Emma to start fidgeting, before entering through the private door. The effect was immediate. Emma's practiced pitch smile faltered slightly as she tried to make out my features in the carefully arranged lighting. Good morning. I kept my voice deliberately lower than usual. I'm Alexandra Stone. Please be seated. Our father leaned forward, squinting slightly. I saw a flicker of something cross his face. Recognition, perhaps, quickly dismissed as impossible. Miss Stone, Emma began, her voice pitched higher than normal. Thank you so much for meeting with us. We're incredibly excited to present Harrison Tech's revolutionary AI platform. I gestured for her to continue, saying nothing. Emma launched into her pitch, complete with flashy slides and ambitious projections. I watched as she promised impossible growth rates, claimed technological capabilities her team couldn't possibly deliver, and dramatically oversold their market position. Finally, she finished with a flourish. With a $50 million investment, we'll dominate the market within 2 years. Any questions? I let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. Several, actually. Let's start with your core algorithm, the one you claim can predict market trends with 99% accuracy. Yes, Emma beamed, it's completely revolutionary. Interesting. I pulled out a tablet, because I'm looking at your technical specifications, and they seem remarkably similar to a pattern recognition system that was developed 3 years ago. In fact, I pulled up a side-by-side comparison. They're almost identical. The blood drained from Emma's face. Her technical co-founder suddenly became very interested in his shoes. That's just a coincidence, Emma stammered. Is it? Like how your market size calculations conveniently ignore 3 major competitors? Or how your financial projections assume a growth rate that no company in this sector has ever achieved? Our father cleared his throat. Now see here, Miss Stone. No, Mr. Harrison, I cut him off. You see here. I stood up, walking around to their side of the table. Your daughter's company has inflated every metric, oversold every capability, and essentially created a fantasy wrapped in technical jargon and pretty graphics. Emma's lips trembled. You don't understand. Actually, I understand perfectly. I reached up and removed my glasses, stepping fully into the light. I understand exactly who you are and how you operate, Emma. The room fell silent. Emma's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. Our father gripped the table edge so hard his knuckles turned white. Sarah, he whispered. Surprise? I smiled, not entirely kindly. The mysterious Alexandra Stone, the billionaire you've been so desperate to impress. She's your little sister who runs that tiny vintage shop. Emma shot to her feet, her chair clattering backward. This is impossible. You're nothing. You sell used clothes. No, Emma. I run a $12 billion investment firm. The vintage shop is just a hobby, something I love doing when I'm not managing one of the largest tech portfolios in Silicon Valley. Our father found his voice. But how? I walked back to my side of the table, enjoying the shift in power. Remember when I quit Goldman Sachs? Everyone thought I was having a breakdown. The truth is, I developed an algorithm, a real one, not the copied version your company is trying to pass off as innovation. I used it to trade my own money, built it into a fortune, and then started Vertex Ventures. Why didn't you tell us? Our father asked, his voice small. Would you have believed me? You were too busy celebrating Emma's every minor achievement to notice what I was building. I turned to my sister. By the way, those market trends you claimed to predict last quarter, you got them from one of my subsidiary company's public reports. Emma sank back into her chair, her perfect facade crumbling. So you brought us here just to humiliate me? No, I sat down again. I brought you here because you need to learn some hard truths. Success isn't about appearing successful. It's about building something real, something valuable. Your company, as it stands, is smoke and mirrors. What are you going to do? Emma whispered. Tell everyone. Ruin me? I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Actually, I'm going to offer you a choice. Option 1. I expose the flaws in your business and you face the consequences of your deception. Option 2. You accept a smaller investment, $5 million, not 50, with the understanding that you'll rebuild your company the right way, with proper oversight, real innovation, and no more shortcuts. Our father reached for the folder with trembling hands. You'd still invest? After everything? Family is family, I said simply, even when they've spent years mocking your choices. Emma was crying now, her expensive mascara leaving black trails down her cheeks. I don't understand. You let me treat you like dirt for years. You sat there at dinner last night and listened to me brag about meeting Alexandra Stone. And it was quite entertaining, I smiled. But now it's time for you to decide. Do you want to keep pretending to be successful, or do you want to learn how to actually build something meaningful? The next hour was intense. We went through their real numbers, their actual technological capabilities, and what it would take to turn their company into something legitimate. By the end, Emma's perfect posture had crumpled, but there was something new in her eyes. Perhaps the first glimmer of genuine humility I ever seen there. As they prepared to leave, our father lingered behind. Sarah, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, I replied. Just stop measuring success by appearances. That evening, I went to my vintage shop, among the carefully curated pieces, each with its own history and story. I felt more at peace than I ever had in the corporate world. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. I'm sorry. For everything. Can you teach me? Really teach me. I smiled, running my hands over a 1960s dyer gown. Come by the shop tomorrow, I typed back. We'll talk about what real success looks like. A week later, my mother called, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Darling, about our Sunday dinners, would you prefer we have them at your place now? No, I replied, I like coming to the house. But maybe we can stop pretending that success only looks one way. Over the next few months, things shifted. Emma stepped down as CEO of her company, taking a lower position to learn the business properly. Our father stopped bragging about stock portfolios at family dinners, and my mother, surprisingly, developed a genuine interest in vintage fashion. The shop remained open, my beloved side project where I could escape the pressure of being Alexandra Stone. Emma started visiting regularly, not to compete or compare, but to actually talk, really talk, for the first time in our adult lives. I still can't believe you let me make a fool of myself for so long, she said one day, helping me unpack a new shipment of vintage Channel. You needed to learn something important, I replied, carefully hanging up a 1950s suit. Success isn't about looking successful. It's about building something real, whether it's a tech empire or a vintage clothing shop. She picked up a delicate silk scarf, examining its pattern. Or maybe both. I smiled. Or maybe both. The headlines still refer to Alexandra Stone as a mysterious figure in the tech world. Speculation about her identity appears regularly in financial magazines. But now, when my family reads those articles, they smile knowingly and keep my secret. Success, I've learned, isn't about proving others wrong. It's about being true to yourself, whether that means running a multi-billion-dollar investment firm or carefully preserving pieces of fashion history. Sometimes it means doing both while letting others figure out their own path to understanding what really matters. Last week, Emma brought a client to my shop. My sister, she introduced me proudly, is the most successful person I know. She didn't mention Vertex Ventures or Alexandra Stone. She didn't need to. The vintage shop's bell still chimes every time someone enters, and I still love the sound. It reminds me that sometimes the smallest things can bring the greatest joy, and that success doesn't always need to announce itself to be real. As for Alexandra Stone, she's still making waves in Silicon Valley, but these days she's a little less mysterious at family dinners.